I really was wanting to put something in the world that the grown-up gets as much out of it as the kids do, more, arguably. I really believe that something special happened with this story. We could not believe how many people jumped on board to help us bring this thing to the screen.
It is the most amazing thing to be in a position now where we can bring this to the screen.
It's whimsical and it's fun, but it's also got a lot of heart. My goal is to make you cry as much as you laugh.
Can't just run off. They've got a pop rocket! Really? When you ran off, I had to leave Lily alone. Lily? Lily?
He's a plucking of feathers.
Aye, Clark, get up. The black carriage is here.
Hey everybody, Chris Wall here. Good afternoon. Hope you guys are well. I am the executive producer and showrunner on the Wingfeather Saga animated series, and we have a really fun day for you today. If you are into animation, whether that's like using Legos and doing stop motion or animating, in pencil in 2D or doing some flip books, any of that, we're going to talk today with a couple really cool animators and learn about the craft of animation and how we're using it in the Wingfeather Saga series in some pretty cool and unique ways. So if you know somebody that's in animation, go tag them right now and tell them about what we're doing and sit back. We'll have a good time together. We've got a couple guests we're going to bring on in just a minute, and I just can't wait to show you some of the cool stuff we have for you today. So Andrew is away, couldn't join today, so I'll be hosting. And if you missed it last week, we had Garrett, our art director, with Daniel, who works with him, do a really cool thing on the building of Glipwood. So if you missed that live stream last week, after we're done here, go check that out. It's available on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you like to see that stuff. So yeah, all right. Okay, a couple things have come up in chats recently asking about the obvious gap of where is Janner. We've announced our cast and all our cool characters, but we clearly have not announced our actor playing Janner. And that is because, honestly, it has been a lengthy process. We have listened to so many wonderful actors. We've auditioned folks. We've done temporary records of stuff. We've tried out my own voice. If you've watched the old short film, was used for a long time. And we have narrowed that down. And coming very soon, hopefully as early as next week, we're going to announce who is playing Janner. We think we found the right one. One of the strategies on Wingfeather Saga, Andrew and I both loved, like Charlie Brown and these really, we love kind of authentic voices, real kids being kids, which is risky because they can grow up and their voices change and things like that. But we are wanting to do that. So we listened to a lot of actors, and finding that balance has been really interesting and a challenge, and we'll tell you all more about that. But we know it's missing. You've told us, we know, and it's going to come very soon. Also, in case you missed it, we released a couple weeks ago our first merch. We did a drop of some new shirts. There they are, brand new. Which one do you think is our best seller? If you want to know the answer, I'll tell you at the end of the live stream. But which one of these shirts do you think has been the best seller? Is it Lily with a sea dragon on the thing? Is it Glipwood Forest? Or is it the Toothy Cow? Like, which one do you think has been our best seller so far? It's been fun to watch. We're literally getting all this info, like which ones sell, what sizes. So like, we're curious, like, are kids buying it? Are adults buying it? All that kind of fun stuff. But those shirts are available if you want to support the show. The show, when it releases here later this year, is free. Like all the Angel Studio shows, we're going to always have them out there for free. And the way you can support the show and help us to make more episodes is go buy t-shirts and support us in that way. And there's other cool things to do too. But you can go to wingfeathersaga.com/store and you'll see those. We've got some new stuff coming to the store very soon. And so I think within the next week, we're going to have some new items added. We've got all kinds of fun stuff planned. But we wanted to start with shirts. That was the thing that you guys told us in your surveys that you were most interested. So there you go. And those are limited runs. So we just did our first run, and we'll see how they go. And like I said, at the end of the thing, if you're a commenter type person, tell us what your favorite shirt is there. Even if you bought it or not, it doesn't matter. Just tell us. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is we are deep in season 1, in case you've missed previous announcements, and we will release the first couple episodes by the end of this year. So we're looking at like a November-December window right now, and then it'll finish out sometime in the first quarter of next year as we figure out that. But we have decided that we're going to look at like a staged release, so we're not going to dump them like Netflix. We're not going to do it that way. We want to stretch it out and have some fun, kind of chapter by chapter unfolding these. So that is how we're doing it. You got the Toothy Cow one. Aw, yay. Thanks, Mari. Yeah. And Pamela, thank you for jumping in. So the other thing we're doing here is we are taking pledges. Hey, Sherry, the Sea Dragon shirt. Yeah. That Sea Dragon has definitely been a popular one. I'm not going to say which one's the most popular, but that one's definitely been a popular one. My family loves the Glipwood tree one, but Joseph says Tooth Cow is definitely best. That we'll see. I'll tell you at the end. Okay, but we are eager to get into season 2, and so we have a pledge. The express interest button here. We are asking if you're interested in helping support our show, and we are crowd supported. Right through whether you buy t-shirts or pay it forward or want to pledge support for potentially investing in our company. We did this last season. We set a world record for the largest kids supported show. And we are entering a place where we could have a window, right, where we could do that again. I can't tell you the exact date. It's against law for me to tell you, but I can tell you that we're looking to see if you're interested in joining it. So we've already had pledged $3.3 million, which is fantastic. We are very close to, as you recall, last year we raised $5 million to do season 1, and season 2 is ready to go. We want to do 7 episodes in season 2. To unfold that story, which is largely get into book 2. If you've read the books, it's largely getting into book 2, a big chunk of that, not all of it. because book 2 is pretty big, but a big chunk of that. So we already have scripts for that. We're in pre-production. We've been doing a lot of concept art for season 2 while we're still working on season 1, which is moving through animation, which we're talking about today, and then into post-production. So that's where we are. So anyways, we'd love to see that number continue to climb so that we can keep our funding and keep us making this show so we can have it out to market. What we're hoping for is for season 2 to be out to you within a year of season 1. We don't want to wait longer, all kinds of distractions and might lose attention, and we don't want to hold it out that long. So there we are. Okay, you can visit angel.com/wingfeather. All right, animation. It's been interesting. I've always loved animation. I grew up watching Looney Tunes and getting to learn and study the craft over the years. As many of you know, I got the pleasure of working on the series VeggieTales as a producer there. Produced 16 of those movies, and so lots of animation that I got to be a part of, and overlapped with a lot of really great people over the years that just loved telling stories that had really big value for families, right? And they were funny, engaging, and great animation. Animation is such a wonderful craft, and today we're going to get to talk with 2 legends in this industry that work for us here at Wingfeather Saga. And to set that up, we have a little video to start to set up how do we do this? How do you start animating, right? Well, we know we have to do some things ahead of it, but how do we make sure that we're animating the things we need and not things we don't need? So we're going to get into that today. But to start that off, we've got a little video to get you into it, and then we'll introduce our friends. Hey everybody, Chris Wall. Hey everybody, this is Chris Wall. Hey everybody, Chris Wall. Hey everybody, I'm Chris Wall. Hey everybody, Chris Wall here. I am the EP showrunner. Welcome to sequence 22 of episode 2. One of the coolest things about adaptation is we get to take scenes like this and put them in season 1.
All right. So he's got this sword.
Twice a week we get a bunch of shots in from our animators that have been kind of worked through the system. Ron Smith, our animation lead, has been kind of guiding them along, and then it comes to me as the animation director to kind of give my approval on it, give some final little second eye notes and stuff like that.
So, Shaggy, what's the news?
Episode 1 was just, it's all new. It's all new for everybody. It's new characters, so it's new personalities, finding how they move, what they act like, what their behaviors are like. That's Janner. No, that's not Janner. See, Janner wouldn't do that. And so there's this calibration just from a performance in an artistic point of view. We have like almost 20 animators, and spread around all over the place, all across Europe and the United States. And it's you worry, are they going to feel like a group that's part of something bigger and something special, and will they feel that collegiate sense of belonging to each other? And they're doing that, and that's such a rewarding thing just from a personal point of view, because I've been part of productions where that's happened, and it's always more fun and the work always shows. And I've been part of productions where people couldn't be bothered to talk to each other, and again, it shows up in the work.
Now, here's a rare copy of a masterwork by Dimble the Chomped.
We want the world to feel grounded, so that when things of vital life and death importance happen, when these deep themes happen, we believe that these characters can truly feel this moment, because we haven't been telling you all along, don't take this seriously.
Mama, I could feel what the dragons were singing about. I think the big one is very sad.
These are just some of the deeper philosophical things we're doing in the animation and in our art.
That's all there is. Don't go ahead, Chris. There you go. Animation. It is a long and sometimes tedious process of frame by frame, bringing an inanimate object to life. And so we have some great animators that are going to join us right now. Let me introduce you to Ron Smith and Keith Lango. Keith, some of you have met previously. Hey, guys.
Great.
Good afternoon.
See you again.
So Keith, as many of you have met a couple times on our live streams, is our animation and CG super. He and I have been together working on this project for a very long time. And Ron has joined us this last year as our animation lead, and we're so glad to have you here, Ron. Ron, if you don't know, started way back in Chicago at a company called Big Idea, and was one of the early animators. What animator number were you for VeggieTales?
I think I was tied for 6th.
Okay.
The 6th employee, not the 6th animator. I was only one of the
6th employee. Oh my gosh.
second official animator. Yeah, it was back in,
It's amazing.
back in
So
the
Ron went on to do some great work on a series that we'll talk about in a minute, 3-2-1 Penguins, and then was over on the Peanuts movie and Tangled, and lots of other really just wonderful movies. So glad to have him. And today, guys, I wanted to dive in and just ask questions about the craft of how the animation is coming together for Wingfeather. But before we get into that, I want to know about how you two met and worked together at Big Idea. Tell me about the beginnings of 3-2-1 Penguins and what you guys did there.
Oh, wow. You
Well,
want to go or you want me to go?
well, I can go. Yeah, that was around the year 2000, starting the new millennium back then, and it was Big Idea Productions' second series, and we'd had the experience behind us for getting VeggieTales all put together and up and running, so we had that to go off of. But the team that was collected for Penguins was a team of generalists, and that's not how we had been doing things prior to that in the studio, where everybody kind of specializes in their own specialty. There are designated animators and lighters and people who did the rigging and all that stuff. On Penguins, though, it was more of a group of people who were adept at all the different disciplines as far as CGI goes. They could model, they could rig, they could animate, they could light, all this stuff. Swiss Army knife of production crew. So it was a little different approach then, and it was the first time I was meeting a lot of the new animators joining the Big Idea team, Keith being one of them, and so glad I did back then.
Yeah, that was great. So to give you some context, a typical veggie show had about 65, 70 different people working on it. Typically, through all the departments and stuff. 3-2-1 Penguin show had 13 people working on it. So a lot of sharing of skills and stuff. And we were jacked up in this little tiny room inside the mall. And so Ron and I got to know each other really well because we sat literally right next to each other. Like, if I turned too quickly, I would hit him with my elbow. And we worked in that space for a couple of years, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, we figured out a lot of things, made a ton of mistakes, as you do when you try something new. But it was fun to kind of wrangle it, put it together. That was just such a great time to work. And so when I heard, hey, Ron's interested, I'm like, oh, please, yes, have Ron interested in our show.
And Ron,
I would love to work with him again.
Ron, you directed that series and were voiced one of the characters, right?
Yeah, I was Kevin, hello.
So I'm curious. So everybody on the live stream right now, if you've heard of 3-2-1 Penguins or you watched that series at all, chat below. Let us know that you were a part of that. I know for me, I remember as a VeggieTales fan seeing Penguins being, what is this? It was like a whole new experience and delightful. And then we want to all be clear that DreamWorks stole those characters. Like I never could verify that while I was there, but obviously Madagascar and those penguins, just so close to the ones you had created, Ron and Keith. But anyways, there it is. So.
Yeah.
Remember, I was trying out for Zigil's voice as a knockoff of Ted White from Mary Tyler Moore.
Ted Knight. That's right. Hello. Yeah. That was part of that.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, it was such a blast just figuring out who those characters were, and we had so many people that went on to work at Pixar and Blue Sky and these top shows all across the industry. We're still using the tools they invented back then. And these were all just people that we got to know and work with, and we were glad for the experience and glad to see them succeed and being able to come back around and be colleagues like this again. It's amazing.
That room was an incubator of some crazy talent. Like you said, the people went on to the heights of this business, the top ends of
Oscars.
it. Win Oscars, get their own shows on Netflix kind of stuff. Like really, really top end people, and we're all just jammed up in this little room in a mall.
So you start with that little group of 8 to 10 people. You're just working it out, and then you both went on to and Ron, I want to hear a little bit about this, going to work for large studios in that kind of working environment. Obviously, we talked about this, the Peanuts movie and Tangled and others. And how different was that experience working for a large studio like that on these big projects compared to that, kind of skunk works approach?
It was completely different. In a word, like I said before, there are specialized artists that do their one thing, and I was an animator, and I had everybody I needed to call if something went wrong, so I could have my computer fixed in an instant with a phone call, and all I had to worry about was my animation and making that work, and in this new environment and this new world of CGI now, it's a lot more independent, and people can work more independently, and there's a lot more consumer level software out there that people like those in our audience might be learning and starting in their own animation career right now. It's a lot more globalized, everything's available to everyone. So,
you're right, because you had to be in a specialized factory, right, with all the technical support necessary, and there's been a democratization of those tools where a lot of kids able to just get access, and we hope you guys out there are inspired today after we show you some things to go try your hand at it. There is something really wonderful about, you do it all the time, both of you. I don't, but I get to watch it, of taking this inanimate thing and breathing life into it, and it's something really very special, and we'll get to see some of that today. Ron, last year we reached out. Blue Sky was closing up shop, and we're like, hey, Ron, we've got this Wingfeather project. Would you be interested? Could we work this out that you could come join us? And what about that call and that kind of the project itself caught your attention and got you to say yes to us?
Well, I got the call from Larry the Cucumber, no less than Mike Naraki himself. And he got us connected, and I got to talk to you and Andrew, and was just immediately taken back to those good old days back at Big Idea, where there's a guiding with really amazing source material to work from. And I knew Keith from 20 years earlier, and as soon as his name came up, I knew it was going to be an exciting production, something worth being on, something that would include lots of ideas and approaches and processes that I've never even thought of before. And it was that sort of introduction to, well, I don't know these guys, but they seem great. I know this guy from way back, and he's always been great. So it's kind of a no-brainer. At the time, the studio where I was working, Blue Sky Studios, closed down, unfortunately. And, that's one of the big things that can happen at the big studios is, I've shut down 2 studios so far in my career. What happens, and that's showbiz. Thankfully, people from my past came back and kind of saved me and brought me on board.
Well, we're so glad to have you. It's been delightful. So one of the things we got to do right away.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
I was going to say, that goes back to one of my guiding principles. Whenever I've been in any studio with people, I said the work comes and goes, the projects come and go, but the people, always treat each other well, because you just never know. It's a small business, man, and if you're in it for 20, 30 years, it comes back around. So if you treat people well, if you're a good teammate, you try to make life easy, you try to make life fun. We're not curing cancer here yet. One of these days, though, I'm going to find that animation cures cancer, and then I'm never going to be able to say that. I'll go to some neurosurgeon and say, "What did you do, buddy? We cure cancer with animation." But until that happens, we have to put the caveat here that we're here. My wife asks me these deep questions in life sometimes, like, "Well, what do you?" I'm like, "Honey, I make cartoons for a living. I don't know what you want."
That's good.
Well, it's part of that we all collectively geek out over a well-placed blink or something like that nobody else cares about. It's like, that's perfect.
I want to be exactly. I want to be clear. When you're hanging out in a room of anybody on our show, it's all the same thing. That we will all nerd out about a well-placed blink. Like, it's the kind of that if that's your thing, you're our people. It's the coolest. So for us to start this, you have to figure out how to bring those inanimate objects to life, right? So when we think about it in the computer, in CG, it's kind of like a clay model. They're just kind of standing there static. And then you have to think about, how do they move? For each of the characters, they're going to move differently, right? To express themselves and to truly come to life, right? And to be themselves. So I know you guys started on that process very early to figure out, how does Janner move? How does Poto move? How does Lily move? How do the Fangs move? Tell us a little bit about that process of bringing them to life and finding their movements that match their characterization.
Well, at the very beginning, we didn't have much to go on to start working through these characters, what they're going to be like, except for what was in the books. And usually on the beginning ends of most shows, you have scratch dialogue, so we didn't really have their voice characterizations to work from directly. So we start where we think we can make the most ground, and with elements of animation that we're going to need down the line all the time, and that basically means cycles. So we work on the different characters' walk cycles, for starters. How does a big guy with a peg leg and a pirate history walk? How does a little girl with a crutch walk? Who doesn't, she's not making a big deal of her disability. It's part of their lives. And how do we make it ignorable? It's a part of their lives, but it's just. How do we make it?
You have some of those walk cycles to show us, I believe, right?
Yeah, I do.
You pull them.
Barring any technical difficulties, here we go. Screen sharing. Make sure I've got the right screen. There it is. Okay. Let me scoot on down to the cycles. I don't know, Ryan, if you can kind of reframe this to knock off that side part. I'm sorry we didn't take care of this in the warm up, but I just realized, there we go. Awesome. You don't have to watch me. Yeah, excellent. So we'll start with Poto. This was an early version. Okay, we got it.
Yeah.
There are qualities about it that work. Some that need refinement. There's a little stompiness on the leg pose, and the shoulders could be rolling. So we kind of dissect these things to death. And then there are subsequent versions. This might be the same one. Yeah, it's the same one. Sorry. So eventually we get the characterizations involved. And, this is a big guy walking. Is that playing okay for everybody?
Sure.
It's a little start-stop, but you get the sense that he's a massive character, but he can still move. He's got a slight limp, obviously, but it's not it's not something that's played up very much. Anyway, let me hide this too.
Oh, and there's Lily.
Here we have Lily. This is an early version. Her handle wasn't being used, and her arm wasn't quite on top of the crutch. It's a little better version.
Yeah, we were talking about this too. That like she could likely put some weight on her foot. Right. It just can't support her very easily. Then this one started to get the balance there.
So then we were trying to find what are the differences between Janner and Tink? Two brothers, just a couple of years apart in age. And Tink is the athletic one, and Janner is the older, kind of tween, awkward, growing into his body, sort of lanky kid. So how do you express those things? Here's an early shot where they run into an alley and stop and are ready to take on a Fang. It's not the one in the final version of the show because we make progress as far as this isn't quite the way Tink is, or
yeah,
but it gets worked out. I don't know how long you want to keep going through this,
it's great.
Cycles. Slog walk. Again, the different Fangs are different body types and different. They walk with. We tried to get them to walk with a bit of a brokenness to them, so that they weren't quite. It's tricky to explain, but there needed to be a certain uncomfortableness that they have in these bodies. This Brack, sort of Slar's boss.
Yep.
So this is basically where we start and start to get a better idea of what the characters are going to be performing as.
Awesome.
We've got a Norm walk cycle here. A little.
Oh man, he looks great.
Yeah.
He's like some sort of split between Poto and a Fang,
Yeah, he's still got the body mass, but he's a little more lazy about it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's great. Can you go back to the boys for a second? Sorry, you just killed your screen. But I want to look at the boys one. I think it's a great one to show us the difference, right, between how this is exactly what we got excited about. Like, Janner is a bit gangly, he kind of lumbers a bit, his feet are huge, and the way he might approach the situation emotionally, and this, he's kind of more cautious. Tink's like, I'm going to take a fight, let's go, right? And I love the contrast here that even in this test cycle, we were already seeing some ideas about who they are, that they don't move identically. There was a test earlier, I remember we got that it was a run cycle, and Janner was running very competently, and I pushed back and he needs more lumbering, right? And of course we got that now because he needs to be that much different than his brother. But yeah, I love that clip. So walk cycles we go through, and this is, I know a lot of the animators. Who was working on those cycles? Do you remember, Keith, Ron? Do you guys remember who was?
Oh, early on we had Tom, and let's see, I know Rue was working on a bunch, and Sinisa was. Did we have Rehab at that time? I think we did. He was doing some. Rehab was doing some.
Yeah.
So all of them finding it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ron.
Well, I was just going to say that they all pitched in, and they all brought in their own interpretation of the characters. The one we were just looking at of Tink and Janner, it's a little overacted. Tink comes in with his fists up, and Jan comes in and he's all kind of freaked out and scared. And if nothing else, it shows that we need to back off this to have it based in a little more reality and not so over the top cartoony. And there are a lot of things that leaders have to unlearn for our show as well, as far as typical sort of here's what you do in this case for an animation of this sort, and they're kind of taught this rote way of handling it, but it just teaches them how to execute something in that one style. Our style is...
Yeah, I want to comment there too, because I think one of the things that has been a big learning source for me, Keith, you've talked about this quite a bit, is, of course, in 2D animation, we learned so much from Walt Disney and the style of animation that was put forward there. In CG that we all work in, Toy Story looms large as far as the way in which things are animated in CG, and it's not like there's rules of like this is how it has to be, but we're also informed by that being the beginning of CG animation that it's really informed how everybody works. Keith, talk about breaking that cycle, like in Ron too, but just saying, hey, we're not going to do this, we're going to do this instead, and give us some insight there.
Yeah. So there's, as Ron was saying, there are these, I call them isms, like kind of quirks of animation, and they're taught and passed down through the ages, and they start to become kind of ossified into sort of these unspoken rules of like, well, this is how animation should be. When you do a thing, you gesture this way, or you move your head that way, or in that moment, when you accent that accent, you do this with the head, you do that with the head, and what happens is it starts to become kind of an affect. And it's not really honest. It becomes more of a patina of life, but not life. It's sort of like a parody of something. Sort of like late stage Van Halen songs. They were a parody of early Van Halen songs. There's nothing new. They're just like this weird thing, right? So it just became this kind of self-referential thing that once you start referring, like when. Another example to this, I mean, his early movies are great and quirky. His later ones just became style shows. There's Wes Anderson. Once you start referring to your own style and then accentuating your style and then accentuating your style and then just doubling down, it becomes condensed into nothing but style. And the issue with that is at some point that works and then it disconnects from believability. And that works in some kinds of stories where you're going to go off into the world of the fantastical, where reality is this malleable thing anyways. In our world, we want you to believe that these characters are living this life. And so that means we have to be honest about how we portray them living this life. In everything, even in the little things. So how Tink would stop running, or how Janner would plead with somebody in his own way to not do a thing, or how even how Poto carves a carving. We're being careful about these things. When we have Shaggy the bartender talk about his creaky knees, he does it in a way that isn't animatory. He does it in a way that you watch this guy and you go, that's a dude who's got creaky knees, right? So we're trying to really dial into that. And like Ron said, you have to unlearn so many of these isms because so much of the rest of the business is leaning into these things. And it's all great in that style. We're just kind of trying to do something a little bit different and try to make it a little more rooted, a little more grounded, but at the same time not be slaves to reality. That's the last thing we want to be on this show, is a slave to reality.
Yeah, and it's like that 80-20. The 80% of it feels grounded. We believe it exists. Last week, Garrett talked about this in the environment design, right? That door frames and windows kind of lock in, and you believe there's a groundedness. So I can believe that there's real peril and stakes. And for me, as kind of the showrunner, I want to believe that these characters are experiencing what they're experiencing. And if it's too cartoony, that sense of suspense and peril and drama and epic goes away, right? So just for everybody at home, this is kind of the balance of things. Last week we talked about environments, which again, if you missed it in the live stream, go watch it. It's really cool.
Go watch it. That's great.
It's great. And so in animation, it's the same thing. We need a groundedness. And this is exactly what we're talking about here is how do we get that? Now, as you start, you guys all have a set of blueprints, right? We call that an animatic, right? There's storyboards that are drawn with audio underneath, and that goes over to the animation team to say, go make this. And they translate that into the computer. That's what we call layout, so that in the computer we see all the model characters and the things all in the computer. And then the animator begins their approach. So Ron, take us through how that happens, right? So starting from here's layout, and now we're going to begin to animate. I know it's a rigorous process. It's not just, well, I just sat back and did it one day. There's more to it, and I'd love to hear from you what that looks like.
Sure. Let me pull up my screen once more. Forgive my ineptitude here.
You're doing great. This is fun.
Oh, I hope so. Okay, here we go. Back into the fun stuff. All right, so we get an animatic with storyboard drawings that are Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I need to show an animatic.
Don't show that yet.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's so fast.
That's a cool piece. We'll show in just a minute.
Yeah. Oh,
Another cool piece that we'll show in just a minute.
there's my animatic piece.
Basically, you're watching mom and dad wrap Christmas presents. is what's happening.
Or try to get a FaceTime call to work without just looking up their nose.
Love it.
All right, I'm calling an audible here. And,
Okay. So an animatic begins, and then we take that into layout. And what's that first thing that they'll take us through as they start to animate these characters?
Let me pull this over. Okay, this is an animatic.
There we go.
Right on.
It's pretty straightforward. It's basically a slightly moving comic book.
Yep.
And the drawings may or may not represent reality once we get into the 3D world. Can you still see my screen? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, layout brings in the characters and all the sets, or not all the sets, I'm sorry, all the props that they'll be interacting with. And that's what this image over here on the left is, with a draw over that one of the artists starts with to give me his idea pass. So you can kind of see the character in the background of that one. Behind the drawings, they're just these called A-pose characters, which is kind of their default standing pose that they get set up in. So before the animator starts doing anything, they show me their ideas. And this artist chose to do it in drawings, which I love because very few people do this anymore. And it's always so nice to see. Some animators choose to shoot reference. And this is Tom performing. This is Nia in the kid's bedroom saying goodnight.
And we have a side-by-side of this one too, right?
Yes, we do. Okay, so basically the artist videotapes themselves performing along to the audio to the shot, performing each of the different characters' roles, and in Tom's case here, he splices it all together in one movie for my benefit. It works really well, so that this is where Tink is sitting, this is where his mom is interacting with him from, and there's no cat in the scene, but
the cat made the movie.
Yay. So this is kind of a side by side.
Wow.
So you can really see how the boys are doing their thing, and we had to talk about, well, he needs to be holding this book, so that was another change that had to be made. But between these two versions, there are probably 3 or 4 different versions in the meantime that go through a blocking pass, which is just this very blocky stepped view where you're just showing the poses, and then each successive pass after that gets a little more refined, and we watch it again.
It's like
a little
sculpting.
later. Yeah, it is. You keep adding a little more, taking away a little more, refining what you've got, hoping your playback works. Trust me, this is smooth and showcase animation right here, despite the little lag we got going. But just all the authenticity that is generated in that first video reference pass comes back around, and it's captured in the final version that just has all the.
So if I understand it, it sounds like you start with layout, which we saw there, where the characters are moving, just kind of being put around like little chess pieces, nothing happening, but just get a sense of where they're going to be, their spatial blocking, and then it looks like we then go to blocking where it's the key poses, right? Where it's like this, then this, then this, right? Just kind of the key poses.
Yeah, and this is after the animators have watched your kickoff videos, which are kind of the starting point for our thought process and our planning, is that we can watch the animatic and get an idea of the progress that, or the subtext that the scene calls for. But before anybody starts on their animation, Chris puts out a video for each sequence, letting us know what he'd like to see, what the character's context is, where they're coming from in the story, what they know, what they don't know at this point in the story, and then what needs to happen to propel them into the next scene, basically. But in addition to the context, there's also subtext, which is what they're not saying. It's what they're thinking. And that's hugely important, especially in a show like this, when the characters have to express themselves without using dialogue. And the animators have taken relatively limited rigs. You know, from my experience working at bigger studios, the rigs are just so polished and so perfect working. They're slow.
And what is a rig? Tell us what a rig is.
Oh, it's basically the skeleton and control system put into the CGI model. So the A-pose characters that you saw sliding around there are just sort of the basic default.
They're just the mesh
pose. It's just a surface, right? It's that gray, single color surface. It looks like a piece of clay. The rigger comes in and puts skeleton joints. In some cases, they put little controls that'll move just a certain part of the face, just a little corner of the mouth, one of the eyelids, and it's this this collection of controls that it's a moment in time. Each drawing is a moment in time, and you want that drawing to look and capture the attitude and feel of everything you're trying to express through the motion, even in that single frame. And the artists that I've been happy to work with so far have really just nailed it.
And I think what you just highlighted too, and we had a comment there, but that we have the animator, in case you don't know this, folks at home, is the actor. And it is such a collaborative art because there is a voice actor bringing it to life, and then the animator is the actor to figure it out, right? And some do it on camera, some do it with pencil drawing, some do it with mocap suits. We have some very funny footage of mocap suits that we won't share today, but soon. It's mocap suits are hilarious. But there's ways to inform the performance, and if you want to be an animator, you have to think through, how am I going to act this out myself? And you got a lot of information telling you, directing you towards the right area. Guys like Ron giving direction on those poses and what's the most effective way to communicate an idea. But then you're ultimately going to act it by moving that rig around and making it happen. And that seems like it's a fairly time-intensive process. Is that we do it in passes? It looks like it's not all just in one sweep, right?
Definitely passes. No, yeah. This is definitely passes. That a typical Pixar show, an animator is expected to do between 2 and 4 seconds of completed animation per week, which means they work 40 to 50 hours a week to give you 2 seconds, or 3 seconds, or 4 seconds. That we don't work at that pace because we don't have Pixar's budget. And also we just don't want to, because as an animator who's worked on feature films before, that drove me nuts. I have too much, I have a hard time concentrating on something that long.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, Ron dove into it and did it for 20 years at all these big places, and it was great, right? Myself, I tend to be a little more scatterbrained. If I have to do nothing but just animate 2 seconds, by Wednesday, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this. Can I have something else? Our show is a little different. We're trying to go in that 13 seconds a week range, which is not, by animation standards, that's considered pretty fast. It's not blazing fast, but it's a lot of work. And still, even then, fast animation is somebody works a full week and you get a little more than 10 to 15 seconds of finished footage. So it is a bit of an arduous process. It is a lot like sculpting. where you start with a chunk of marble. The idea is in your head, and what you have to do is reveal it. And so you take your big chunks away first to show your blocking, and you're like, okay, the construction feels right. And then you go in and work on some of the details, and then you work at that again and refine it again, and you make little course corrections as you go. And that's why it's important. Like the idea stage for us is number one. Like it's easy enough to polish a piece of animation. I mean, it's a technical skill, but it's not really the highest artistic skill. Okay, sure. The highest artistic skill is in the performance, is in understanding who people are, how people behave, how people move, how people think and feel and interact. It really is an actor's job. Animation is it's a very interesting skill because it's a two-part job. There's a technical aspect where you have to learn how to make things move. And there's a lot to that. It takes years to learn how to make things move really, really well to the level that, a film studio could work with. But then there's also the artistic side of like, why are they moving? Mm-hmm. You can just move something around and it would be beautiful but empty because there's no soul to it. We care about the soul. We care about what's inside that thing, right? And so that's why these passes with the videotape or with the thumbnails, it's important. Like that's the point where we can say, if we make a change here, if we make a call here, we get the most reward for whatever our note is. If we don't do that, we wait till later. By then, so much work is done. It's like going to somebody it's like going to Da Vinci or somebody who sculpted a big giant sculpture and saying, I know his hand is on his hip right here. It'd be really cool if his hand was up. Dude, it's stone. I don't know what you want me to do.
You can do it.
I gotta start over.
A lot more.
So that's kind of animation is a very similar process.
Yeah, I love about the passes that we do in this craft. In live action, it's very different. In theater, it's very different. In all kinds of forms of entertainment. But in animation, we get multiple passes. So as the showrunner, like I've worked with the writers and then with the storyboard artists and kind of moving all this stuff through. And each time get to kind of help guide. So on a scene like that with Nia and the boys upstairs, I get to say, hey, here's the emotional tone we're trying to get out of this, and can we aim for this? And it's kind of like continuing to provide guidance like a compass bearing, right? I'm a scout leader, so I love compass bearings. But if I say, hey guys, we want to head on a heading of 120 degrees, and everybody begins to head that way, you're not fixed on it. Like if we're not 120, we're dead. It's saying we're all going to head that way emotionally. How do you see it get interpreted? And so Keith, Ron, each of our animators kind of help to additively bring that to life. It's a really cool thing. And I have worked in at times where it's not additive, Keith. And I think you've done that too, where it gets kind of contracted and smaller. It has to be exactly like this. It has to be exactly this area. And that becomes a very forced and fixed expression. And we want our animators, and I've said this before, I got teary-eyed one time watching some of the animators work because they're taking risks and they're trying things and they're really invested in and bringing these characters such fresh meaning that's really true that you often don't get. And I'm so thankful for each of our team members, obviously you two, but all the animators that are doing this right now. And I want to talk about the difference between the humans that we work with, so the Igaby kids and the guys around town, and the Fangs. Like how different is that? And we got to be careful here. So if you've read the Wingfeather Saga, there are some spoilers here. So we're trying to dance around that a little bit. But we know that the Fangs of Dang are somehow, they came from somewhere. If you've read Lord of the Rings and the Uruk-hai and Saruman did something to they're a twisted something kind of creature. We wanted our fangs to be twisted, and I kept the mantra over and over, I want them broken. I don't want them to be straight lizard. I don't want them to be straight human. I want them to be broken. They gotta move like something that's like weird and in between. And that was a lot of work. Ron, tell us about exploring that and how the fangs move. You showed some cool clips there, but how do they move and how does that animation process differ if they do?
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, no.
Next.
What do we got? Let me share
Shortest
my
live
screen.
stream ever.
That's right. It's all the same.
Here we go. All right. This was the first big sequence in episode 1 where we had to meet more of the Fangs, and I can play this. And you'll hear that Brack's voice changes from one shot to the other. The first one is the scratch audio that we're working from. Second one had a slightly updated audio with the actual voice actor in it. But it was a matter of figuring out what character embodies what sort of global character, what sort of iconic character, and Slarb has that kind of fidgety feel of Randall from Monsters Inc. and just kind of paranoid and sketchy. Brack, on the other hand, is just this giant solid wall of Fang that doesn't have to move or express himself very much, just because he's a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Vopover is kind of the Eddie Haskell one character, where he's always sticking it to Slarb, and the playback is a little choppy here, but we're just figuring out how they move, how do they work things with their giant claws, and how do we anticipate things like the drool that's going to be on their mouths and all this stuff.
Yep.
So you'll see in this one shot, Slarb is kind of he's kind of wiping his I missed it, sorry. He's kind of wiping his face and anyway.
Yeah, and each of those guys, Sanish obviously worked on that, one of our animators, who is just a blast to work with. But each of those characters has that embodied, right? They move to their characterization, right? A guy that's kind of big and full of authority, Slarb, who's kind of conniving, and then Vop, who just could care less because he's, he feels like he's the ace Fang. It makes, I can't wait to show everybody what you guys have created, because episode 1, of course, is in post-production now, and we've seen all that animation, and it's just amazing. And episode 2, we just launched episode 3 this morning, into animation. So guys, we are cranking along here. If you're just dropping in, we're here talking with Ron and Keith, who are working to bring Wingfeather Saga to life in animation in the computer. This is really the area of expertise, and it's just been amazing to see what they've done. Tell us a little bit about some of the 2D showing up in our show. So we have a lot of CG, computer animation, but there are some places, and we did this in the short film too, but we're doing it way cooler now, where we're bringing some 2D handcrafted animation to life. Keith, tell us about the choices of when we're using that and how we're using it.
Yeah, so here's an example of where we just kind of plus a scene. So we have a toothy cow going over and chomping on his glip fruit. So we decided, your typical CG film or production is going to go ahead and try and make this stuff, all particles or simulations, and we use some of that here and there. But for the most part, they're trying to, match a certain level of stylistic reality, whatever that line is. Our show is intentionally trying to be more like this, more painterly, right? So there comes a point on some of these characters where, like here on the Dig Toad, he shows up once in the entire first season right now, so he might show up later. But we thought, hey, let's go ahead and do some 2D animation, mix it in with these beautiful painted backgrounds, and then also for like some of the effects, like dust kicks or water drips, or in the case of the toothy cow, slobber on his jaw. Let's do that stuff as 2D. And composite it in, and the fun part is we composite it in real time in our assembly paths, so we can see it and play with it and adjust it right there as we go. So we have Aliona. She's over in Prague. She's our 2D animator. She does both the creatures and the effects. She's doing a fantastic job. She brings just a lot of fun character to the moment, and every time I see stuff like, when I saw these slobbery cow things, hey guys, by the way, this is fresh off the plate. Like this stuff, this scene literally came across my desk this morning saying, hey, is this good enough to show? So like, not only did I approve it, I said, yeah, it's so good, let's show it to the rest of the world. So There you go, Alion. It's so
You
good.
guys,
We're just
audience at home, you're getting the very freshest stuff because you're watching this live and we're showing it to you as it comes live.
yeah.
It's by no means
This is
final
not
at all
stale
either.
bread.
Yeah, it's fresh,
Yeah,
but it's not
and
final.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So this is just the that play blast animation where we don't have all the paintings and all the things working. We have the animation working, but we use that as a template then for Aliona to do her 2D animation on top of. So then when we put it all together, it looks great.
And I think
And
what I love about this. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, while we have this, clip up, I just wanted to point out the characterization here in Janner of him throwing. He's bragging that he's basically saying, "Here, I can throw it farther than you," and then he picks the next fruit and throws it. But it's it's just kind of a weak
right.
little.
Yeah.
It just cracked me up. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, that was a good one. But what I love about this too, guys, is we've talked all along about Wingfeather Saga as something we wanted to make feel handcrafted and alive, right? That both last week again, Garrett talking about the environments, and Keith, when you and I first sat down on this in 2015 and said, what would it look like to have a handcrafted CGI animated series? Like, what could that look like? And we began that process of these, where you see the paint strokes in the background, and you see now not only on the characters and their texture and their paintings, but also in even some of the animation, like through the drool that you just showed in the dust. Tell us about how do we merge the two? Because you can't take just CGI animation and put it on top of you'll feel like it's like, you know, a 2D art card and there's a round CG object in front of it. How do we make it so that feels like it's one image?
Ooh, it's a lot of things in there. We do a lot of things with a custom shader that we wrote that allows us to manipulate the final result of the character's look in real time to blend them into the painting. So we bring the painting in, we put the character in front, and the shader is built to feel like a painting. And so we play around with where the light falls on it, but we're not super concerned with the realism of it all. It's more about how it feels relative to the background. So the background painting is really our recipe for how do we make the characters look, because we want to put the characters, make them feel like they're inside of it. So from a visual point of view, there's that, but there's also how they move.
How they move, yeah.
And this is a big thing for me that's gone back for years and years and years, is the concept of cohesion. If you're going to choose a style, then everything that you see and do in the world has to match that style. So if you use photorealism mixed with cartoons, it's jarring because it is so disconnected. In fact, it is used often for comedic purposes, like SpongeBob or something like that, where they'll do a live action shot in the middle of a show, and it's super funny just because it's so unexpected and it's so it doesn't match up, and that disharmony is actually funny, or the disharmony can be discomforting. Like, what's wrong with this? This doesn't feel like it's the same thing. And so, because we care about the core idea so much, we do that with the paintings. Like, look, we're not going to render every leaf lovingly. We don't render every single blade of grass. Sometimes a blade of grass is just a paint stroke, paint stroke, paint stroke. Good. Clump of grass is done. But we're opening, I like to say, we open the door of the imagination for the audience to bring their idea of what that grass should be from their own mind, from their own imagination, and project it into the world. And so by leaving things unrendered, we leave the door open for imagination to fill in the blanks. We do the same thing with how our characters move. So we don't animate smoothly, and we don't spend a ton of time polishing things up. So if you look at a Disney film, it's beautiful motion. No lie, it is absolutely beautiful artwork and craftsmanship. But there's a level of detail that is absolutely necessary because the leaves in the background are perfectly rendered realism, and the light is perfectly rendered, and the skin looks like skin, right? Because of all those other visual elements say this is real, the motion has to feel super fine as well. We go, hey, the background is a painting, the textures are painting, the lights are painting, why not make the movement a painting as well? And so we don't polish out these things to the nth degree. We get the core idea down, we communicate it, we express it as far as it needs to go, and then no farther. And we let the gaps sit there. So Chris, this is an old story we share, but when we took our short film around in 2017 and following to various streamers trying to get this thing going, we would show it to people, and they'd say, "This is lovely, it's beautiful, it's great, but we don't think audiences will put up with this level of stylistic impressionism for a whole film or whatever." And we were pretty convinced, like, yeah, we think they will. And then along, sometime in 2019 comes this, little short film called Into the Spider-Verse, where that's all they did was stylistic.
That's right.
And it made a ton of money. And all of a sudden, everybody's now willing to listen to us when we said, yeah, we told you. If it's cohesive, it'll work.
And that's been a big part. So in animation, I know this part, know a little bit about animation, but typically you'll see in that type of animation where it's animated on ones, where every frame is a new bit of movement. Old 2D animation was animated on twos, right, where it would every 2 frames you get a bit of new animation. We get to do variable, and Spider-Verse actually did that too because of our work in the Unreal Engine, which our whole production is hubbing inside of, which is just astonishing and so cool. We have so many more things we want to show you guys about that, but it allows us to do variable frame rate. So when a character is moving quickly, we can move it on 2s. If they're sitting still and kind of more painterly, a thoughtful moment, we can back that down to 3s. And it really gives this very artful feeling to what we're watching. And so if you guys have watched like the Lego movie is meant to mimic Lego stop motion, and so the character motions are very poppy, pop, 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 that kind of thing. If you've watched, any anime, right? Well, that's kind of very slow. They can hold on panels for a long time because it is just a straight 2D drawing. And I think, Keith, what you said a second ago is really one of the things I loved about reading the Wingfeather Saga book series. Was there was a feeling of the story existing off the page, right? That there were more things that Andrew hadn't written about, but there was some part that was on screen, right, or on page in that case. And I think in this, I love the idea that because we invite you as an audience to watch this thing on screen that's a bit abstract, right? We haven't filled in all the details. It asks you to engage your imagination, to fill in. What else do you see in that forest? What else do you imagine off the edge of this screen? And that's all intentional. And I love that we're getting to merge both these ideas artistically and in the story, and make this series one thing. So anyways, guys, that was an amazing look. Thank you so much for taking the time to let us in behind the curtain a bit.
I'm not done yet. I got tons more to talk about.
Do you have more? I don't want to cut you off, but
just more wonderful things to say about this production and just the way it's bringing together the old people who have been around forever and have these great ideas to make it come to life, and joining forces with the younger, newer animators from around the world and getting to get their input and their perspective and seeing things from so many different new angles and being able to incorporate those into the young production that we've got started here. And just everything comes together and starts fitting together really well. And the look of it was one of the things that got me interested and involved from the start. And thanks to Keith and Chris and everybody that it's coming to life. And
it is, and we are getting to see that for everybody at home. We have these amazing folks like Keith and Ron who've had some great experience in bringing things to life, helping younger animators. So last week, of course, Garrett with Daniel, who's fresh out of school, a couple of years, and just really investing in. And we love that kind of mentorship and growing. And it's there's for me in my faith journey, there's some scriptural reference to this, right? Where that you need the older dreaming dreams and the young men bringing that energy. And there's this blend of thing that we're getting here in this mentorship that is delightful. I know, Keith, you get to work with a couple of young people that sit directly behind you, and we'll get to see some of their work later that are helping to bring this to life. And it's a delightful mix, folks. It's not a bunch of old codgers in a room. It is a bunch of old and young across a variety of ethnic and gender backgrounds and everything, that are just all coming together to bring this art form to life. And it's delightful to get to see it all. And we're so glad to take a minute and show you. Keith, any parting words from you before we let you guys go?
This is fun. It's the fastest hour of my day. I could sit and visit and talk with you guys and just ruminate about this. It's a true blessing. It really is. I know that's a word that's oftentimes co-opted to mean, "Hey, look how rich I am," but no, it really is a thing that you don't get opportunities like this very often as you walk upon this rock hurtling through space in the allotted years given to you. So to be able to do it with such good people, good friends, to see, as Ron was saying, it's not just Ron from Big Idea. We got musicians and Adam, our old song guy from Penguins, is working on. Yeah. It's great to be with old friends, but then also the opportunities to bring new people on. Like we've got some young folks who you look at them and go, I think they got something. I think they got something here. Let's give them a chance, right? We hire some kids right out of school and they pick up and run with it. That's just as refreshing. I mean, it really is. I couldn't do it if it was just a bunch of old dudes because we'd sit around and complain the whole time. But it's really great to see. My only lament, honestly, in this entire thing is that we don't have a studio that we all can gather in because they're such great, cool people that I wish I was around them all day. And that's the one lament I have is that, our chances to get together and be in the same space and break bread and to nudge each other.
They don't even know this, that I can't reach over and actually tap you on the shoulder. So Keith right now is in Spokane, but that's where he lives, in Spokane, Washington. Ron, you're in upstate New York. Right? That's funny. Good job, Ron. And I'm normally here in Nashville, and it's just an amazing thing that we get to do this, because the technology exists. And thank you, both of you, for investing so much and spending the time. Thanks for taking the time this afternoon to be with us. I will let you guys go, and we'll wrap this up. See you guys all very soon. Folks at home, thank you for joining us this afternoon. This was delightful. I was so excited to get to show you some of the great work that Keith, Ron, and that team are pulling onto screen. You're going to see a whole lot more very soon. Okay, what do we have upcoming? We have, first off, if you are interested in helping our show to grow, you can pledge support. We've got that open right now. If we make that an offering for season 2, you could become an investor in the series, not just a donor, but an investor. And so if you're interested in that, go visit angel.com/wingfeather. We've had a whole bunch of people pledge support there so we can get season 2 underway. It is underway, but fully fund that and make it happen. If we can make that available soon. If you want to support us in other ways, share it with your friends. Word of mouth goes a long way. Tell them about the books, tell them about the series. You can go to wingfeathersaga.com and sign up to get emails from us, and we'll tell you about our progress as we head towards release of season 1, which we can't wait. Also, I will tell you there is a teaser trailer that's coming very soon. We gave you that first look where it was a little bit something. Now it's a proper trailer you can share with your friends. It's coming very soon. It's waiting for a little bit of animation to come off from the team, and then we'll get to show that to you. And again, if you want to go support the show by buying a shirt, that's how that works. The show is always going to be free, but if you want to go check out one of our cool Wingfeather Saga shirts, those are available. wingfeathersaga.com/store. All right, at the beginning of this, I said, all right, which one do you think in the comments is our best-selling shirt? If you stayed this long, thank you so much for staying in with us. I'll just tell you. The Toothy Cow is trailing in third. Oh my gosh, I really thought it was going to be our best-selling, but it's doing very well. Our number 2 most popular shirt, Glipwood Forest, the tree one. Yeah, that's our number 2. And our top-selling shirt so far, by a pretty good margin, it's running pretty hard, is, of course, Lily on the Cliff with the Sea Dragon. That one, it just is a beautiful shirt, and it's been very popular. So if you're interested, we have those on our store, and anytime you guys go and buy a shirt, you're helping make our series keep going. So isn't that cool? All right, we have more live streams coming up. I believe next week we've been having some scheduling things because Andrew is actually headed over to the UK and is going to join us, but we are so excited to tell you about music. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. If you want to follow us on Facebook, either way, you'll see a prompt from us that for the next live stream, which we're looking for next week. And it looks like everything's going to align to get all of our people together to dive into the music of the Wingfeather Saga animated series. And I can't wait to show it to you. Thank you all for spending your Thursday afternoon with us, and appreciate the time. We can't wait to show you what's next, and also announce our release schedule. So that's coming up. I think maybe next week we'll have our full release schedule out for you to check out. So Thanks again for spending the afternoon, and we'll talk to you again in another week or so. Take care.